Welcome back to the Xbox Shame Pass, the series where I play, rate, and will eventually rank every game on the Xbox Game Pass. I'm still unemployed and have plenty time to devote to playing video games I don't really care for. You know what it is, welcome to the Xbox Shame Pass Part 2. Game 57. Chinatown Detective Agency. Licensed Private Investigator. Faces are hard to animate, so just don't animate them. No one will notice. This is a point-and-click detective game with a pixel art style. You play as a private investigator solving cases by interacting with the environment around Singapore. And this game proved to me that I'm a complete idiot. The game works a bit differently to most, in that you're supposed to use the internet in real life to research and solve your cases. Not only is this an interesting twist to most games, it's also something I completely missed, so when the game told me to research a quote and find out what book it came from, I explored the in-game world looking for a computer for 45 minutes, before googling what to do and realising I could have just typed it into my phone the entire time. It's a cool idea, I'm just really dumb. There's also the implication that this game runs deeper than you'd expect. The intro screen, the mysterious tasks and people, but I think there's a lot more to unpack here. 7 out of 10. Game 58. Chivalry 2. If you want a break from sweating Call of Duty or Fortnite over and over, Chivalry 2 is a great shout. It mixes medieval warfare with some great objective game types and strategic combat. You can't just mash attack, you really have to plan your moves in order to play well. You can play in first or third person, although I didn't really play long enough to get a feel for if one is better than the other. Storming a castle with 32 people on your team is awesome, and mashing X to scream your battle cry is obnoxious as hell, and I love it. The entire game is multiplayer only, and so I imagine there's a heavy competitive scene. Not really my thing, but I had fun regardless. Admittedly, I spent half my time playing stuck in the tutorial. So far in this video, all I'm doing is proving I suck not only at puzzle games, but pretty much everything else. 8 out of 10. Game 59. Chorus? Chorus? Covus? This thing. Let's go, bring on the seizures so I can feel something for once in my life. Any game with a permadeath mode you know is going to be great, or a steaming pile of new potatoes. So before even starting this, I have some concerns. From looking at the Xbox store page, I can't tell what this game actually is. It looks like it could be a shooter game of some kind, like Control, or a horror game like Dead Space. The music on the main menu is pretty cool, giving me adventure game vibes, so I'll go with that. Let's see if I'm right.
I'm Nara.
Hello Nara, I'm the one and only Veroni. Turns out I was completely wrong on both accounts. This is a spaceship shooter that plays and looks great. You complete missions in a free roam hub world asteroid field, mostly either collecting items or shooting at pirates who have stolen your collected items. You can upgrade your ship to shoot even more pirates and help you collect even more items. It's basically Simpsons Hit and Run in space. The writing let this game down for me. There's a whole underlying premise that machine and people have kind of mixed, melded. I don't know the term, but done well, I like this concept. Here it just comes off as Spooky Space Witch has magic powers that let her fly good. I had some tense dogfights which made me actually shout with delight when I barely survived, so the gameplay is compelling at least. 7 out of 10. Game 60. Cities, Skylines. I tried to play and immediately needed a 5 gig update, so already this game is plummeting towards a 0. I named my city and flicked on left-hand traffic. Since I'm from the UK, and change scares me. I don't play games like this often, maybe a little bit of Sims now and then, but even still, I kind of hate it just because they have their own rip-off of Twitter. I don't have a clue what I'm doing. People that actually play this game are probably screaming in their chairs at how poorly designed Jenkinville is. I'm just watching the town treasury empty so damn quickly and I have no idea how to stop it. Alright, you get water and sewage. Your god is feeling merciful today. Why is no one coming to visit? We need your cash! Somehow this train wreck of a town has 320 people living here, and the question on everyone's lips is, why? Who hates their family that much they have to live in a town whose economy is a water plant and coal power plant? Come on! This town is so damn close to being profitable. We've done it, boys. Roll out the keys to the city and let's have a parade. Put the hospital and school in between the cancer-spewing power plant and the dump. Nothing bad could come from that. Well, at least I experienced something other than recession and bankruptcy. I enjoyed Cities Skylines, but it's just not my kind of game. And it's not one I'm going to invest a lot of time into to get good. 5 out of 10. Game 61. Citizen Sleeper. I'd like to make some jokes about this game, since I'm trying to be entertaining and all, if that's what you can call us. But I actually want to do this game justice, so get ready for my first serious review.
I'm super serial.
Citizen Sleeper is a text-based RPG, where you play as a kind of human, kind of robot hybrid, called a sleeper. You have escaped from something, whatever it is, I didn't play long enough to find out, and have made your way to a space station called the Eye, where you work odd jobs to make money and allies. The game works on a dice-based decision system. Each day, RNG, or random number generation, for all you silly billies out there, will give you some dice numbered 1 to 6. You select which dice you want to use on your actions for the day, which have their own risk associated with them. If you roll high, you can get some pretty good rewards, and help progress the game. If you roll low, you can damage your synthetic body or end up losing a bunch of money. You only have as many actions as you have dice, so you need to plan your day accordingly to what you need. Food, health, money, or maybe you just want to progress the story. It's a delicate balancing act, that even saying it out loud now sounds boring. You roll dice to maybe succeed at breaking down a ship for parts, but when your character's life and well-being depend on it, it's quite compelling. The game is mundane, but that's what's beautiful about it. The characters you meet are just everyday people trying to get by, and it feels rewarding to help them in that. A day where you've just gone to work and managed to buy some medicine and food feels really rewarding. The slow, somber notes that ring out in the soundtrack remind you that time is passing, but you're in no rush. There's always tomorrow, right? My only criticism is that the RNG system takes a bit of figuring out. If you want a provocative game, and when I say provocative, I don't mean a game trying to be edgy for the hell of it, I mean a really thought-provoking game, play this. 9 out of 10. You ever just think, fuck it, I want to jump between trucks for an hour? No? Just me? In ClusterTruck, that's all you do. Get from the start of the level to the end. However you do that is up to you, as long as it involves jumping on trucks. The levels get incrementally harder, adding jumps for the trucks, obstacles, zero gravity sections, trucks running the other way, and each set of 10 levels has a different theme to keep it fresh. I can't see anyone playing this for more than an hour, but it's a pretty fun hour. Arguably, the reviews are just as fun as the game. My dad won't let me have it because he's an ugly idiot. 5 stars. I'm a big fan of O3N73's review. H. 5 stars. And now for my own. 7 out of 10. Game 63. Coffee Talk. A self-described, coffee brewing and heart-to-heart talking simulator. Which sounds nice enough. I like Citizen Sleeper, trying to touch on the mundane and normal lives of people, so I should like this too, right? Well, you make drinks by choosing ingredients to match what the customer wants, they tell you their stories until someone else walks in, and the cycle repeats. There is some interesting themes, one of the first that's introduced being the forbidden love between an elf and a succubus, their words, not mine, but it's quite surface level and I got bored before I could see if they went anywhere with it. The writing is a little off and seems quite forced, a bit like a soap opera. Making latte art is the thing I enjoyed most about this game. Serving someone a coffee with insults written in the foam is pretty gratifying. 4 out of 10. Game 64. Commandos 3. HD Remaster. So I'm not gonna lie, after playing 64 games, my patience for games that don't hook me is about as thin as the fabric on the underwear I've had for 11 years. This game tore a hole in that underwear patience. It's a top-down, real-time strategy game, where you need to plan moves in a World War II war zone. I played the original Commandos back when I was about 7. I didn't really like it then, and I still don't like it now. If you're the kind of person that brings out your copy of The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich when your friends come over, play this game, you'll probably like it. But everyone else, 2 out of 10. Game 65. Conan Exiles. Age of Sorcery. I'm glad to finally play this, if only to get rid of the 144 gigabytes currently squatting in my hard drive. Wait, what? Conan Nudity DLC needs an update. Are you serious? 43 gigabyte update? Fucking what? Oh my god! I've never had a game try so hard to not let me play it. Are you serious? Why say the game is ready? Why lie? Just don't say it's ready! Conan Exiles is a great game. You can toggle buttons like journey steps and weapon trails. There's sliders that, slide. Look at it go. Whee! You can watch some credits. Thanks, Scott. Great game, buddy. At least I think this is the entire game, since, I've installed 144 gigabytes. You'd think the game would be here and not need another 43 gigabytes of crap. Against my better judgment, I downloaded the entire thing to actually play. despite how much I wanted to just move on. There's actually people in the servers, so I guess that's a good start. Not many options for character customization, although... Whoa, okay, putting a big black bar there. The frame rate issues in the opening screen are just awful. By the time I started playing, I just have no interest in this anymore. I'm done. I can't even force myself to play this, I'm so disinterested. A series first, 0 out of 10. Game 66. Contrast. Contrast is a puzzle platforming adventure game where you play as Dawn, which I only know because of this collectible I found. Which is fine. I'm a fan of contextual storytelling. Your character, I think, is a ghost, from the small amount I played, since other characters can't see them, and they can become a shadow person to traverse obstacles, which is a pretty fun mechanic. I reckon they were killed by this guy, because I can't think of any other reason why they dropped this collectible so early in the game. The music is nice when it's there, but a lot of the time you just play in silence, and melting into the wall doesn't even have a cool sound effect, just... The story is pretty generic, and you kind of just start in the middle of it, as if you're supposed to care already. The camera and controls are pretty janky, just seems like some bang average platformer with an interesting gameplay mechanic. 6 out of 10. Game 67. Cooking Simulator. I'm not a massive fan of the physics-based simulator game genre. I feel like they're all just trying to cash in on the success of Surgeon Simulator in the early 2010s, which was already pretty stale when Goat Simulator came out in 2014. There's a few game modes, so far so good. Now these iOS/Android phone game looking graphics I hate. There we go. The timer gives it away. This game was made for phones. So where is the store that lets you pay to skip the repair timers? Screw it, let's drop some beef. Now this is gameplay. Right, let's get rid of this stuff. And the board too. And this. Why not? Oh yeah, let's play some darts. Put the gas can in the oven, turn the oven on. Nothing bad could ever come from this. You know what? Fun to mess around in. Not fun waiting for Dave to spend 5 minutes real time fixing your cooker. 4 out of 10. Game 68. Costume Quest. This is a fun little kids game where you go trick-or-treating. It's got some funny moments and it's pretty harmless. It's not trying to be something other than what it is. It's another game from Tim Schafer from that period where he was trying weird things, like adding real-time strategy to Brutal Legend, or adding turn-based combat to a children's game about collecting sweets. And you know what? It's fine. Reminds me of Bug Fables that I reviewed before, and I quite enjoyed that game. You change Halloween costumes for different abilities, rotate party members for different fight approaches. Overall, it's not bad. 6 out of 10. Game, drumroll please. Now, one thing I did not expect was Terry Crews hyping me up. Here's a fun bit of trivia. Crackdown 3 exists because of Halo 3. And that's a reason to make a video in itself. Fuck it, actually, I'm gonna do that one next. Crackdown 3 is a third-person shooter game that employs an XP-based upgrade system on your agility, shooting, driving, melee, etc. Each level up lets you do things you couldn't do before. For example, I leveled up in agility and this unlocked a little double jump jetpack thing so you can jump higher. You upgrade each category by playing that style. Shoot bad guys for shooting XP, jump around the town to find agility orbs to get agility XP. It's pretty simple, and it's that easy. The main game is you beating the area's boss, unlocking parts of the city, and repeating this over and over. It's the same formula as Crackdown 1, which was a sick game. Crackdown 2 I never played, but I heard it departed from this. Crackdown 3 really feels like a remaster of Crackdown 1 to be honest, so it's kinda fresh, but the gameplay does feel a bit dated. 6 out of 10. Game 70. Cricket 22. Official game of the Ashes. I'm British, I know a little bit about cricket. I know how many bowls are in an over, but I'll be honest, we're all friends here. I think cricket is quite boring. The only reason people go to watch cricket is to have an excuse to get pissed with their mates under the guise of being cultured. Thank God Cricket 22 exists, so now I don't even have to leave the house to have an excuse to get drunk. The main menu's really janky, it looks like they've designed it in an afternoon. I've also never played a cricket video game, so naturally, I skipped the tutorial and started playing right away. Look at this stare down. Maybe I should have played the tutorial. I actually don't know if I'm playing as England or Pakistan right now. I swear I chose England, but now I'm not so sure. I'll be diplomatic. If you like cricket, 10 out of 10. For everyone else, 1 out of 10. Okay, bye. Game 71. Crimson... wow. Game 71. Crimson Skies. High Road to Revenge. We're back to the OG Xbox with this.
Yeah, boy!
You know, I miss games where you have to enter your name, and control screens like this. Cricket 22 really could learn something from this 2003 flying game. Crimson Skies is a pretty standard arcade flight game. You're a plane, shoot down bad planes. But it plays really well. For gameplay that is almost 20 years old, it controls well, shooting is satisfying, you get some extra maneuvers to keep things interesting like loop-de-loops and rolls. The game is pretty good all things considered. I don't actually think it looks terrible now. At times, it's quite pretty. The ocean even splashes up onto your screen if you fly close to it. Voice acting and music is pretty solid. I did a few missions to get some cash and had fun. Kinda wish I played this game back in the day now. Doing dogfights on Xbox Live back when it came out would have been epic. 8 out of 10. Game 72. Crossfire X Operation Catalyst. Strap in because this is going to be a long one. If you want to make a good game that people will play, don't focus on gameplay, don't make an engaging and fun world to explore, just stuff as many cool sounding words into the title as possible. The absolute mess of a game you've put together will do the rest. I wrote that part of the script just before I played this, and it's 100% accurate. This game is just a symptom of the bigger problem in the gaming industry, which is the free-to-play games. With free-to-play games, you don't take any money up front, right? Because it's free to play, hence the fucking name. You get money from in-game transactions, mostly players buying skins for their character, guns, little charms to hang off their guns, that sort of thing. Now don't get me wrong, there's nothing inherently wrong with this business model, and I appreciate the fact that it means there's a lot of kids out there who may not have much spending money to buy games, so having a bunch of free games to play is really good for them. And they can spend money on stuff in their favourite games when they can, at a much lower price point. What this model doesn't account for is human greed. Yummy money, give me more! A lot of free-to-play games get pushed out and just maintained on a live service because of this business model. Because the longer it's out, the longer you have to try and make back that money that you've sunk into development and hopefully even get some profit. This means a large amount of free-to-play games are being published unfinished with shallow content and gameplay that isn't fleshed out or even finished. This also means that development is incentivized to be kept cheap in the first place, else you've got a bigger hill to climb before you can make any profit. So even before the game is out, the development is centered around making a bare bones, cheap experience. And there's a lot of free-to-play games out there, right? So when 99% of the population is playing literally anything else, why are you going to play Cross Catalyst Operation X or whatever this shit is called? You won't. You're going to play what your friends are playing, Fortnite or something. And because of this, there's a constant churn to try and add new stuff online. Content, seasons, battle passes, whatever you want to call it, because that's where the money is coming from. This leads to no attention being put towards core gameplay, that may need tweaks since it was rushed out in the first place, and all the attention is going to the store. This game proves this. Literally half the main menu, options 3 out of 6, is monetization and things to try and get you to spend money. So if 99% of people are playing something else, where is the money coming from, you may ask? The answer is whales. No, not the majestic sea animals. Human whales. People who spend an absurd amount of money on a game. Put it this way. If Crossfire X had 10,000 players and each spent $2 in the store, the developers make $40,000. Not bad, right? Compare this to if Crossfire X had 500 players. That's 95% less than 10,000, and each spending $100 in the store. That would make the developers $50,000 from 95% less people. And you might say, yeah, but you'd have to be an idiot to spend that much in a stupid game like this. And you're right, you would be an idiot if you spent that much in a stupid game like this. But that doesn't matter. If this game launches and dies after a few months with only these 500 people playing it like this, the devs will keep churning out skins and shit content because those suckers will buy it and let the devs rake in the cash. All that this ultimately does is reward developers and investors for making broken games designed to be abandoned by 99% of people, and to milk the cash from the 1% that stay to play it. Overall, the gamers are the ones that suffer because developers have no incentive to work hard and actually make a good game. If free-to-play games are something you enjoy, then I'm happy for you. Play them as much as you like. I'm happy you get some enjoyment from them, but they're not something I can support when the model just seeks to deliver the easiest way to grab money from consumers with the least amount of effort. I realise that a lot of this isn't specific to Crossfire, so overall I'll say, if you told me this was Call of Duty, I believe you. There's no identity in this game, other than Call of Duty is popular. Let's make a free-to-play Call of Duty and rake in some cash. 1 out of 10. Game 73. Crown Trick. Judging by the menus, the game is lacking a bit of polish, but let's dive in and take a look. You know what? It's not that bad. Crown Trick leaves a bit to be desired in terms of look and music, but overall I'd say it's a unique roguelike / dungeon crawler that's pretty fun to play. The game is based on a grid turn-based move system, so as you take your turn, all the enemies can take theirs. This adds some strategy to the game rather than just mashing and hoping to luck your way through, like in some other roguelikes. There's also a few other systems, like the stagger system, where damaging enemies quickly can stagger them to get some easy hits in, even bosses. Special moves to deal large amounts of damage or area damage, and an expanding hub world. Overall, I didn't play too long, but the design seems pretty fleshed out, although I can't speak for how subsequent playthroughs of it might work. 7 out of 10. Game 74, Crusader Kings 3. I hope you like reading because the tutorial is pages and pages and pages and pages of text. I played for around 30 minutes and I was still in the tutorial and I still have no clue how to play. I'm a fan of strategy games, but this game was just too heavy for me. I think the premise and how fleshed out the game is actually really cool. There are so many variables that affect gameplay, and the amount of features and information at your disposal is staggering. I play Civ 6 quite often, and don't even use all the information screens in that game, so this game is just completely overwhelming for me. I'm interested in the concept, and if they gave you a more arcade version that was stripped down, disabling a lot of the features as an introduction, I'd probably vibe with it a lot more. Naturally, if I liked the game then, I'd happily start learning the more complex mechanics. At the moment though, it's just too much for me, and I'm not going to spend what seems like several hours just to learn the very basics of the game. I'll be generous with a 5 out of 10 because I think the underlying game is strong, it's just not for me. Game 75, Crysis. This is an FPS from 2007, although I think this version may actually be a remaster, so it looks a little bit better than the original. I've heard of Crysis before, I know it has a guy in a suit who shoots things, and that's about all I know. I like the opening of this game. The gist of things is that North Korea has invaded a small island chain and your team is sent in to investigate on the down low. Very quickly, things go awry. There's something else on the island with you. The tutorial was really intuitive. Gunplay feels really smooth, as are the controls for your suit. Which, by the way, gives you cloaking, super speed, and an armor mode so you can soak up more damage. This, coupled with the open world island, gives you a variety of ways to approach any combat situation. Sneak through, blast through, or just go around it entirely. A few small features that I really like. Pausing just brings up a live menu, so you need to be safe to adjust things. The enemy AI is great for 2007. They will retreat into the forest when you cloak, and shoot wildly towards where they think you might be if they're advancing. Despite the suit, you can still die after a few shots, so the game actually still gives you a challenge. Overall, the game just feels really ahead of its time, in terms of gameplay and in how it looks. There are plenty of comparisons between the 2007 game and the remaster, and sometimes it's quite hard to tell the difference. 8 out of 10. Game 76, Crysis 2. This just really feels like they took everything from Crysis 1 and made it better. 9 out of 10. Game 77, Crysis 3. I haven't too many new insights for Crysis 3. On the main menu there's a previously in Crysis option, which is great and makes the game more accessible for new players, which I basically still am since I've only played Crysis 1 and 2 for collectively maybe an hour and 30 minutes. The tutorial is optional for seasoned players as well, which is always a nice touch. They add the bow as a new addition to Crysis 3, and it features heavily as part of the promotional material, and the bow's fun to use, but overall the start of the game just didn't feel as compelling or mysterious as Crysis 1 and 2 for me. 7 out of 10. Game 78, Danganronpa, Trigger Happy Havoc Anniversary Edition. Another game from my good friends over at Spike Chunsoft comes... whatever the hell this is. We have our relatable protagonist, Makoto Naegi, a student who's been selected to go to an ultimate school full of ultimate students, because they randomly chose him, and therefore he's ultimately lucky. Although I can't see why a school would also enroll the ultimate fanfic writer, ultimate gambler, and ultimate biker gang leader. It turns out the school is more than meets the eye, and is actually an interdimensional portal of some kind. You talk to other students to progress the story, like the ultimate moral compass, the ultimate baseball star, and the ultimate fanfic creator. Although I'm sure I didn't need to tell you that last one. It's basically a school for kids with severe personality disorders and bad haircuts. Oh yeah, and one other thing. You're trapped in the school forever unless you kill another student without being caught to escape. I don't usually like these kinds of talking simulator games, but you can still explore the nightmarish school, which is pretty fun. The art style isn't for everyone, but I enjoy it. And the music is pretty funky, I can vibe with it. I'd really like to play more of this. 9 out of 10. Game 79, Danganronpa 2, Goodbye Despair. This is more or less the same as the first game from what I could see, with slightly different graphics and UI. And Game 80, Danganronpa V3, Killing Harmony Anniversary Edition, also seems to follow the same formula. Both get an 8 out of 10 from me. Game 81, Dante's Inferno. This is a hack-and-slash game loosely based on the epic poem Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, where you bring salvation to the savages in a holy war, return home and find your wife murdered, then descend into the circles of hell to retrieve her soul, because that shit bad vibes, man. The art style of the game is great. The version of hell in this game is a very good interpretation. The combat is a bit button mashy, and the quick time events get in the way of some really cool looking finishing moves, but overall if you want a fun experience, nothing too demanding, and one that just makes you feel like a badass, then this is the one for you. 8 out of 10. Game 82, Day of the Tentacle Remastered. No, this isn't some weird hentai game. Straight away, the option to have dev commentary puts us high in my estimations. Quite often, it's little details like this that suggest care and passion actually went into making the game. This is a remake of the 1993 game of the same name, and it's a point-and-click adventure game in every sense. This is one of the grandfathers of modern-day adventure games, and so, while tedious at some points and repetitive at others, it's a good piece of gaming history. This thing shipped on a floppy disk, for God's sake. The remake has a few nice touches, simplified controls, updated graphics, an option to switch to the classic view so it's got a good mix of quality of life changes, while still staying true to the roots of the original game, and servicing pretty well to the fans of the original game. I found it pretty repetitive, but there's some good slapstick moments to break up movement and clicking. Overall, I give it a 6 out of 10. Game 83, DayZ? DayZ? So I'm probably showing my age now, but DayZ was originally a mod for a game called Arma 2 or 3, I forget which one. This mod became so popular that it spawned its own game, both of which I never played because I'm too cool for popular things. Playing this now, it doesn't seem like I missed out on much. Mechanically, there isn't much to figure out, but I still struggle to work out how to switch gear. The game looks awful and is buggy as shit, and really there just wasn't much to do. I played for about 30 minutes, and 25 of those I was wandering around a factory, found some clothes and lost all my food by switching clothes. Eventually I found a military base. I was under the impression guns and ammo were scarce in this game to promote survival by other means, and when I say other means, I mean other than just shooting and looting other players, of which I found a big fat 0 amount of. I was wrong though. I found 3 guns and like 20 bullets. So to have some fun, I just killed a zombie and then died. Then the game crashed and I didn't respawn. This may have been fun and novel almost 10 years ago when it came out, but that novelty seems to have worn off. 3 out of 10. Game 84. DC League of Super Pets. The Adventures of Krypto and Ace. Let's be real right now. Expectations are not high for this game, but I will proudly say how wrong we were. It's not Shadow of the Colossus, it's better. Admittedly, it's an on-rail shooter that's just a shameless cash grab tie-in game to go with the movie that also released in the same year. For the best video game based on a movie ever, see my shameless self-promotion right here. And for an on-rail shooter, it's not the worst I've ever played. You can dodge, slow down, speed up, use a few special moves, fight boss enemies, and there's a whole adoption minigame which is just adorable. 7 out of 10. Game 85, Dead by Daylight. As is tradition with these online games, you have to sign away your life, soul, and those Yu-Gi-Oh cards in that shoebox in your attic. To even play the game, you're tricked into completing the tutorial, which acts as some kind of quality control, I guess. So you know what, I'm not actually that mad about it. In case you don't know, Dead by Daylight is a multiplayer game based on horror movies, where a team of survivors have to activate generators to power a door handle, which they can then open to escape the killer, played by one other player. My first mistake was to play with randoms, but as mentioned in part 1, my list of friends is an ever-shrinking 0, so I'll take what I can get. I played as a survivor, and honestly the game was pretty tense. I alerted the killer by failing to fix a generator and hid from them, helped my teammates, and eventually we actually escaped. I don't think I'd play this often, but if I ever do leave the safety of home and socialise, then maybe I can play with people I know. 7 out of 10. Game 86, Dead Cells. A pixel art roguelike. I was expecting little from Dead Cells, thinking it would be another cheap attempt to cash in on the genre. As I've said already in this video, I'm an idiot, because this is fun. Like, a lot. You run through procedurally generated levels, slaying enemies. The controls are so smooth, it's like your controller is made of melted butter. You get better weapons, upgrades, finally getting to that first boss, you die, and you have to start all over again. You lose absolutely everything except a few permanent upgrades, and most importantly, the knowledge you've just gained about enemy patterns, mechanics, so each time you get further and further. It sucks starting all over again, but I just couldn't stop myself from going back for more. Plus the game is gorgeous. 9 out of 10. Game 87. Dead Space. As much as I try to avoid bias in these videos, I'm only human. I've played Dead Space before. I liked it so much I posted about it on the Xbox 360 achievement forums. I have 100% of the achievements, so yeah, I'm pretty biased, but at least I'm upfront about it, which has got to be worth something, I guess. Dead Space is a 2008 horror game set on a derelict ship, the USG Ishimura, which you, Isaac Clarke, originally arrived to repair after a communications blackout. However, things quickly go awry, as you might expect, and you find yourself fighting for your life, and getting a sweet leg workout while doing it. There is heavy inspiration from Resident Evil 4 in terms of gameplay, with the third-person perspective over the shoulder, shooting, the pacing of encounters, basic stuff, but where Dead Space excels is refining this gameplay experience and combining it with one of the best designed hellscapes and stories I've had the pleasure of playing. For example, something I've mentioned about other games, there's no pause menu. Instead, pausing opens up your character's suit UI for you to browse to the map, ammo, etc. without stopping the game, so there really is no escaping the hell you've entered. The Ishimura is a massive ship, yet feels intensely claustrophobic, like the walls are closing in on you. The sound design is immense, even closing a menu is sharp and sometimes gives you a bit of a startle. I hate horror games, but everything about this game is just perfect to me. This thing revolutionised survival horror as much as Resident Evil 4 did, and you wouldn't believe this was made in 2008. It's gorgeous in a really sick way. 10 out of 10. Game 88. Dead Space 2. How can they make a game I consider perfect even better, besides making it crash upon startup? Look at fucking non-stop action, gore, horror, explosions, more leg workouts! Dead Space 2 keeps the atmosphere of the first game, but adds in some intense action set pieces that either make you feel like a badass or scare the crap out of you. Both work pretty well. Once again, the environment and sound design is fantastic. The main character, Isaac, finally has a voice, so you can hear more than just his grunts. Now he curses too.
Data, your fucking route didn't work.
2 in a row, 10 out of 10. Game 89. Dead Space 3. To complete the trifecta, here comes DS3. The game kinda falls down at the start. Instead of contextual storytelling or an optional recap, you're thrown into a forced cutscene just ramming exposition down your throat, and you're shouting, please, no more, but they just keep loading the spoon of storytelling and aeroplaning it down your gullet. Meow. The game starts with a long walk and a guy we don't care about, in a storm that's raging. Oh wait, no, it's okay, it's over now I guess. But don't worry, because this game has Nazi zombies? But don't worry, because our boy Isaac is back, and now he means business, because he throws shit off the table, wears a cool leather jacket, and is now a retired action hero badass. But don't worry, because if you don't like Nazi zombies, in the first 20 minutes you fight more regular dudes than you do alien space zombie monsters, shooting from the hip or using cover-based combat. Because EA decided, despite Dead Space 1 and 2 shipping more than 4 million copies each, generating over 450 million of revenue in total, that the Dead Space series was a commercial failure. So Dead Space 3 had to appeal to casual gamers. Ultimately, this means less horror, Michael Bay level of action, co-op mode with Dude Bro Sergeant John Carter. Dead Space 3 just seems like it doesn't know what it wants to be, and I think a large part of that is you really can't have high-budget survival horror action games that are going to challenge Call of Duty, Halo, etc. At least back in 2013. The game is fine, but it's just disappointing after the 2 previous games. 6 out of 10. Game 90. Dead Space Ignition. You thought Dead Space was over? Haha. It's only just begun. Just kidding, this seriously is the last one. This shit deserves 0 out of 10 just for this opening scene. Oh what? You thought this was a horror game? No, don't be silly. Some drawings in this game leave a lot to be desired. Look at her face. Look at these lemmings wriggling away. Ignition is a graphic novel prequel leading into the events of Dead Space 1. And between scenes, gameplay is just playing a bunch of hacking minigames, which aren't at all that fun. The voice acting is okay, the design and animation is something a 13-year-old uploads to DeviantArt, and that's being pretty generous. Outside of a story related to Dead Space, the game is really boring, which is a cardinal sin. 3 out of 10. Game 91. Death's Door. You like birds, right? You like the Grim Reaper, right? You like playing as a bird Grim Reaper, right? In Death's Door, you are this bird. Reaper of Souls, who gets in a bit of trouble for misplacing the soul you are supposed to collect, so you jump across worlds to find it. Despite the concept, this game is adorable. Running around as this little guy, swinging your sword with your wing hand things. Gameplay is really simple. You run around the level, kill enemies with your sword or bow, fight a boss, die, Spend some souls for upgrades, go back to the boss, and win. It's a bit repetitive and the gameplay is really simple, like the old top-down Zelda games, but it's pretty difficult. Waves of enemies get thrown at you, there's no health meters for bosses so you have to guess how damaged they are by cracks in their bodies, and you only have 4 hit points, with upgrades being rare, so when you die you just get booted out of the level to start again. It's punishing but rewarding, and you can find other weapons like this umbrella too. The level design can be confusing. Each level, or at least the first, since I didn't beat it, is a labyrinth of tunnels, gates, and bridges, which is overwhelming but also very rewarding to explore. There's a bit of backtracking, but it always feels like you're finding something you didn't see before, which is an amazing feeling. And this, combined with the difficult but fair gameplay, more than makes up for the repetitiveness in my opinion. It's also just really funny how the role of the Grim Reaper is just a job birds have in this world, where the hub level's just a boring office building. 8 out of 10. Game 92. Deathloop. This is primarily a first-person shooter with elements of stealth, puzzle, and adventure. Since it's by the developers that made Dishonored, that's not too surprising, and it really shows. It's not Call of Duty, you're not going to mow down hordes of enemies, ammo is relatively sparse, you'll be planning encounters, hacking sensors to not alert anyone to your presence, throwing bottles to create distractions, or platforming across rooftops to avoid fighting altogether. From what I could see, the game is mostly open world, and that gives you a great playground to explore, which you'll really want to do. The game world feels fresh, being a stylized version of what feels like the 1960s, with more advanced technology. The environment design is simultaneously like an English village, a fairground, and a city from Half-Life, which, while strange, makes for a compelling and fun place to actually explore and immerse yourself in. There's a kind of faux self-awareness about this game that kind of gives me the same vibes as those Twitter accounts that companies have making jokes about the fact they're trying to shill products. But it's done well and it's pretty endearing, such as the mysterious messages that appear from nowhere and your character's conversations feeling real and tinged with humour. Mechanically, it's pretty interesting too. When your character dies, you lose all your gear and start again where you woke up at the beginning of the game, hence Death Loop. And the item resets, but you maintain story progress, giving you something to lose by rushing into situations and dying. Overall, 8 out of 10. Game 93. Deep Rock Galactic. This is a game where Minecraft Steve has grown up and started working for a deep space mining corporation. You can either play solo or as a party of 4 dwarf classes to delve into a planet, mine materials, kill the natives, then hightail it back to your drop pod before it departs. If you're not hooked by space dwarves, then the mining and shooting elements are pretty fun, with each class also offering unique perks, such as the gunner having a zipline across dangerous areas. You outfit your characters to take on tougher missions for more loot to upgrade your character, and repeat and repeat and repeat. For a season-based game, it's pretty fun. It's not bombarded into your face all the time, like other games. To access it, you go to a terminal in your hub world, which is your spaceship, which deserves a mention of its own as it's actually a pretty good hub world. It's believable, there's bonus things you can interact with, such as this barrel-kicking minigame. You can get a drink from the bar and cheers with your party. This is a hub world done right. The mining and cave atmosphere is tense and you feel accomplished for escaping. Overall, great game. 9 out of 10. Game 94. Descenders. This is just a downhill mountain biking game. Do tricks, get some points, unlock skins. It's okay. It looks pretty mediocre, the music's fine, mostly being some synth pop / dance, but if you're into biking, go ahead, you might like it. 5 out of 10. Game 95. Despots game. I guess this isn't even in version 1 yet? This is some kind of auto battler, which is a genre I'm not really familiar with, outside of Flash games online back in the day. I just didn't get this game. I found the UI bloated, the controls confusing, and the gameplay really frustrating. Overall, just being quite dull. I think there's supposed to be strategy to the chaos, but I didn't find this intuitive to learn. The music just became a mocking loop in my ear. I had a look at the reviews and people love this game. Maybe the auto battler genre just isn't for me. 2 out of 10. Game 96. Destroy All Humans. A remake of the 2005 brain harvesting, anal probing, human zapping, cow tipping third-person shooter, in which you play Krypto 137, a little green spaceman.
I am not green.
The gist of the game is that Krypto and Pox, members of the Furon species, are having a crisis. They clone to reproduce as they lack the necessary apparatus, but each clone damages the Furon DNA so it can't carry on indefinitely. Luckily, due to some rambunctious shore leave, Furons have come to Earth in the past. Long story short, all humans have Furon DNA in them. See if you can figure that one out. So the Furons need to harvest this DNA from Earth to save their species. The game is pretty much a parody of 50s and 60s space and military culture. It's funny, and playing as an alien destroying and enslaving your own race feels oddly enjoyable. The game does show its age. Some actions feel quite clunky, the jump animation is non-existent. The core game, shooting, disguises, mind reading, brain eating, and saucer flying is okay. It doesn't set the world on fire, but if you want a funny alien story rather than Game of the Year, this will do nicely. 5 out of 10. Game 97. Dicey Dungeons. A turn-based dungeon crawler with a premise based on a game show where you, a dice, wants to win big by battling monsters for a sweet new car. Gameplay-wise, you roll dice and you can use the numbers to activate your equipment, such as attack, heal, freeze your enemy's dice for a turn, or +1 to your dice. You earn new and better equipment by taking alternative paths in the level at the risk of dying and losing your progress. The underlying game is quite fun, but I really don't vibe with the art and sound direction. The music I forget is there half the time, which is quite disappointing. 6 out of 10. Game 98. Dirt 5. Racing games are normally quite simple. Drive a car in a loop. Dirt 5 has revolutionised this simple concept. Instead, you sign contracts, choose appropriate nicknames for yourself, pimp out your ride, and listen to obnoxious, boring podcasts. Outside of the core gameplay, the racing minigame is pretty fun. Drifting around corners is really satisfying, the difficulty seems really well balanced, and there's great attention to detail in how traction is different when it starts raining, as well as adding a modicum of difficulty. The cars and tracks are varied and look really nice, but the narration and UI is just obnoxious and annoying. I think this is probably aimed at kids with all the colours and simplified design. 5 out of 10. Game 99. Dirt Rally 2.0. Once again, turn away your soul to even play the game. You know what? I do have some questions about the terms and conditions, and I want to get in contact. Codemasters HQ is only an hour drive from me. I'm going to go in and I'm going to get some answers. Wish me luck.
Hello, reception.
Hi there, I'm looking for Codemasters. I have an interview.
Yeah, come on in. Top floor and first door on your right.
Thank you.
The door is open.
Can't believe that worked.
Floor 5.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. How can I help?
I have some questions about the terms and conditions. If Dirt 5 is for kids, Dirt Rally 2.0 is for your older brother's dad's older brother. Dropping the arcade-style racing of Dirt 5, this is a full-on rally racing simulation game, with a co-driver giving you calls, a garage, extensive damage to your car, and a race team backing you up. Even if you're good at racing games, you'll find a steep difficulty curve jumping into this game. The tracks and cars look good, but some of the fans look like walking JPEGs. Despite never having played a racing sim before, I was starting to get the hang of things and was feeling pretty accomplished with just finishing a race, let alone winning. If you want to step up in racing games, this is a good pick. 7 out of 10. And we've made it to game 100. Let's make it a good one. Game 100. Disc Room. Don't let the thumbnail made on the Microsoft Paint fool you. This is a deceptively good game. Disc Room is a puzzle game where you avoid giant spinning saw blades trying to get a sweet new red paint job by covering themselves with your insides. You avoid these by running around, unlocking abilities like the dash or slow time, and achieving challenges to unlock the next room. There's even boss saw blades to fight, which is a good twist to the genre. I prayed for a good game, and by Jove, Phil Spencer delivered. 8 out of 10. Game 101. Dishonored Definitive Edition. Set in an alternative reality, you play as Corvo, bodyguard to the Empress. Until she's murdered, it's blamed on you and you're set to be executed. You've been dishonored. You get it? It's the title. So you escape and set out to undishonor yourself.
I want my honor, my throne.
How you do this is one of the core design features of Dishonored. You can play the game killing guards and your assassination targets, or you can sneak past, knocking them out and completing side objectives that give you another option of removing your targets so you don't have to kill them. What you choose to do and how you play the game will change the ending that you receive. It's a neat mechanic that's been done to death already, and I don't fully like it because this again is one of those games that just decides killing equals bad, so don't kill people or you'll get a bad ending. The game is at least super fun to play. Outside of your sneaking, sword fighting and pistoling, Dishonored also gives you magic powers. Blink lets you teleport a distance, up or down, to parkour around each level. Dark Vision lets you track enemies through walls, which is great for a stealth run. And there's a heap of other powers which I didn't unlock, but each allows you to decide how to approach a mission. Given the player choice is almost always good in my opinion. Outside of this, the art design is really nice. It's almost realistic, but everything has this light, washed and textured look, like the world has been painted in watercolours. The steampunk setting is a believable one, and serves as an interesting world for the adventure. The mystery of the outsider is compelling too. A spirit appears in your sleep and gives you powers. Why? Also, the mask you wear just looks sick. 9 out of 10. Game 102. Dishonored 2. This feels a lot like the first game, just slightly more polished in animation, story and character development. I didn't see too many changes to the first game, just a slightly more rounded experience, but not enough to justify another rating. 9 out of 10. Similar story for Game 103, Dishonored Death of the Outsider. A standalone expansion of Dishonored 2. 9 out of 10. Game 104, Disney Dreamlight Valley. My parent or guardian is unsure if this game is appropriate for me. Not sure I can review this. I miss when you bought a game and you could just, play without having to sign 4 fucking contracts to play. After getting the legalities out of the way, Dreamlight Valley is Disney's own take on the Animal Crossing and life/social simulation genre in general, with the twist that this has a whole roster of Disney stories, locations and characters to choose from, like Mickey Mouse, Goofy, Merlin, Scrooge McDuck, and Pixar moms. You basically just restore Dreamlight Valley to its bright and cheerful self by planting crops, mining rocks, fishing, and making friends by doing side quests with your Disney pals. It's a live service game too, so new characters, missions, and locations are added every month. It doesn't look awful for a free live access game, and your character actually does look like they belong in this world, and also like a human, unlike our next Disney game, but there's still a few bugs to work out. It's still in early access, so there isn't an official release yet, so I won't be too harsh on it for that reason either. 7 out of 10. Game 105, Disneyland Adventures. In this game, you run around Disneyland with a shit-eating grin on your face, take pictures with Disney characters, and play awful minigames. Now you know what this game is about, I've saved you from playing it, and saved you from Donald Duck's cold, slimy clutches. No, Donald. Donald, just let the kid go. It doesn't have to end like this. Donald, no! Game 106. DJ Max Respect 5. This is a rhythm game that really does not translate well to a controller. Your buttons are left D-pad, up D-pad, Y, and B, for God's sake. I was going to rate this 3 out of 10 because it's at least playable, and then I went into air mode, which had a live stream of players commenting. You heard that right. Some great discussion going on here, like, Salute Trump 2024. This is turning to Ligma. Naturally, I joined in the fun. I'll bump it up 1 point just for this. 4 out of 10. Game 107. Donut County. If you told me you're making a game where you throw things into a hole, I'd say you're scraping the proverbial barrel of ideas for your game. But somehow, Ben Esposito did it. You play as a hole, move around the screen, and swallow everything. That's it, but somehow it's enthralling. Maybe it's the cute art style that helps. There's even some kind of story that goes along with this game, but I didn't really care for it. Whole eat thing, get big, eat big thing, the end. 7 out of 10. Game 108. Doom. A faithful adaptation of the game that revolutionised the FPS genre, the original of which may appear on the Game Pass soon. Who knows? This is an arcade-style FPS set in Australia, or Mars or something, with a focus on killing, and killing with style. Damage enemies for a sweet and brutal finisher, movement is fast and gameplay is smooth, making it easy and satisfying for you to plough through hordes of demons and send them back to HE double hockey sticks. A particular point of mention is the level design is well done, in that you can slow down and explore a bit more, pick up codex entries if you want some more lore, or just rush through killing everything. The choice is yours and sets the game above those with a forced experience. There's also some nods to the original 2 for those that have played the series before. Musically, there's an awesome score of heavy metal to accompany you smashing the face of a demon in with an Undertaker Mankind Hell in a Cell special. 9 out of 10. Game 109. Doom. The 1993 classic that started it all. For those too young to know what Doom is, it basically kick-started the FPS genre that we have today. Your Warzones, Halos, all of it can be traced back to Doom. It's amazing how fun this is to play, even now, 30 years later. The Game Pass version boasts a few updates to the original game, the control scheme has been changed for controller, and the up-res looks pretty good. Much like Doom 2016, exploration is encouraged, as well as murder. It's always fun running into a room, oh there's no up or down on the camera, doesn't matter, boom! Kills them anyway. 8 out of 10. Game 110. Doom! 2. This takes everything from the original and adds more to it. More weapons, more enemies, longer levels. It released 10 months after the original, so I won't rag on it too much for not innovating. I think the devs probably thought Doom was a winning formula, so let's just make another quick game with a few things we didn't put in the original. It's still a great game, but I'll deduct a point for feeling like a rehash of Doom 1, 7 out of 10. Game 111. Doom 3. This is a remake of the 2004 horror shooter Doom 3, released on PC and Xbox. Graphically, there's a massive difference between Doom 2 and 3, but gameplay-wise, it's still at the heart an arcade-style be-a-badass run-and-gun FPS. Doom 3 went down a more horror route, utilising the power of modern PCs and the original Xbox to utilise shadows to create tension and fear, giving you a torch to light dark areas, as well as going down a more story-driven route than the predecessors. As a result, the intro is a lot slower than Doom 1 and 2. 15 minutes went by before I even shot a bullet, which was disappointing, and the 3 cutscenes flying out of Soldier Man's head were just boring. Fun fact. In the original Doom 3, you couldn't use the torch and a gun at the same time, so you had to choose if you wanted to see or fight. This was so annoying, someone made a mod called Duct Tape, which fixed the torch to your gun. This mod was so popular, this is now a default option in the remake. The game doesn't look that great for a remake, and if there was many other quality of life changes, I didn't notice any. The sound is blisteringly loud at times, and the pacing of the levels just feels off. Should I be scared and taking my time, or rushing through and killing things? You move slower than the other games too, so the fast-paced shooting element just feels really non-existent. I think I'd play the original games over this, to be honest. In a sentence, it feels like Event Horizon the game, rather than Doom. 4 out of 10. Game 112. Doom 64. Here's a tale for you young whippersnappers. Back in my day, we'd put the number 64 after games when they released on the Nintendo 64. Okay, Grandpa, back to the room with you. We're upping your medication. It's probably for the best. Doom 64 is more or less the old Doom we know and love, with slightly more detailed sprites and environments. I think it also tries to lean into the horror aspect a bit more, with brooding music, darker areas. It's cool, just it doesn't really feel very doomy. 5 out of 10. Game 113. Doom Eternal. To round off our trip through the dark reaches of hell, Doom Eternal is fucking ace. This is a sequel done right. Take the previous game and put it on steroids. The level design feels like what a modern Dante's Inferno might be like. Look at these poor guys in their cage. Damn, dude don't look so good. Right away you get introduced to the chainsaw for even more brutality in your executions, and using it also replenishes your ammo, so no excuses, get revving. It really feels like the first game on steroids. There is a longevity to the game with multiple additions through DLC, such as a Horde mode, the Old Gods campaign DLC, and the multiplayer mode, along with customization options. I'm only going to base my score on the base game though, and it hasn't done enough to wiggle out another point from me. 9 out of 10. Game 114. Double Dragon Neon. As I understand, Double Dragon was a popular arcade beat-em-up back in the day, and Neon is supposed to be a homage to the series with a modern-day twist. You fight bad guys with light, heavy, and special attacks, and move through the level. Some enemies drop tapes and cash. The tapes are used to unlock special moves, and the cash lets you buy consumables or more special moves. It's a pretty standard beat-em-up, and it's kind of fun. Only when you start the game for the first time, you'll get an achievement for 1 gamer score, and the description mocks you saying now you'll need to beat the rest of the game to get the 19 gamer score to even your number out. I don't even care about gamer score, but if you do this, fuck you. Make a good game and people will play it. Don't force people to play, even for a joke. This is dumb. 3 out of 10. Game 115. Dragon Age Origins. An RPG game from the late 2000s, Dragon Age Origins offers a well-built, dark and gritty fantasy world for you to sink your time into. You can choose an origin story at the start of the game for a unique starting quest, around an hour long for each start, giving you a reason to replay with a new character. I chose City Elf as mine, and already Origins shows its gritty realism, starting me in a segregated part of the city that elves can't leave, but humans come in and treat us like dirt. The social commentary is less subtle and more hostage negotiators screaming into a megaphone. That's what I like about this though. Just because it's a fantasy world doesn't mean it's all rainbows and fairy dust. Serious political, cultural and social issues also exist and form part of the narrative, and hopefully, in the later game, you can try to fix these issues in the world. Even in these starting missions, you can feel the scale of the game. There's multiple dialogue choices, each with unique responses, side quests and a large map for you to explore. Visually, the world and the 5 NPC models repeated over and over aren't too much to look at. unless you really like popping textures, but the story is compelling enough to help me overlook this. Basically, Soris is a coward, and this dude's a racist, and I really want to kill him. So good job making me hate a character within 10 minutes, that's good writing. Combat is real time and influenced by your character's skills, mine being throw sand in their eyes and a swift kick to the balls. I know, it's a pretty overpowered build. It's not overly exciting, you kind of just stand there until your skills recharge, but I imagine later on you can actually play with a bit of strategy, position your party ahead of time, and get some enjoyment from attacking groups with a well thought out plan, as opposed to just standing there like I was. Overall, 7 out of 10. Game 116. Dragon Age 2. The vibe I get from Dragon Age 2 is that EA was pushing for the game to appeal to a broader audience. As a result of this, you get dumbed down character selection, no more races or backstories, just choose male or female, and then melee, rogue, or mage. The in-depth dialogue is now replaced with a simplified, Mass Effect-esque dialogue wheel for nice response, cynical or sarcastic response, or aggressive/evil response. The combat is similar to the first, but is more action orientated. Literally about 30 seconds ago, I was talking about how standing there was boring, so I guess this is a good change. I chose a sarcastic response and the game crashed, so I had to start again. I tried to think of a good name, but then I thought of a better one. Say it out loud if you don't get it. Oh no, a small fire, our one weakness. There is a moment early on in the game that's supposed to be meaningful, which is essentially your character's brother dying from getting smashed to shit by an ogre. But this isn't really impactful when we've just met the dude, and he's said the least out of anyone so far. It falls really flat and doesn't fill me with confidence for the writing in the rest of the game. There's some nods to the original game here, which is nice, and the opening takes place at the same time as Dragon Age Origins, so there's a bit of continuity there too. Oh, us refugees can't come in? Okay, well I guess I'll just walk right past you then. And the game just lets that happen, I guess? The early game seems a lot more on rails than the previous, which for an RPG you don't really want. Overall, the experience just seems like a more dumbed down version of the original. Like I said, it's probably to appeal to a broader audience, aka the filthy casuals. This is partly why EA has a reputation for being anti-consumer. They make really shallow, vapid experiences, and if they don't sell 5 million copies within 17 minutes of being released, they decide the game isn't profitable and kill the series. It's what happened to Dragon Age, Dead Space, Skate, Mass Effect, and Assassin's Creed is going that way too. Anyway, rant's over. 6 out of 10. Game 117. Dragon Age Inquisition. EA have dead spaced freed another franchise. This is all about action, chaos. But to be fair, Dragon Age Inquisition sold the best out of all the games, so at least it's getting a sequel. From the start, they've brought back role-playing into the role-playing game by letting you choose your species and class, reversing their mistake from Dragon Age 2. The game itself is the usual Dragon Age formula: have conversations in a narrative-driven world, and kill things in between. The talking part of the game hasn't changed from Dragon Age 2. You still select which image best describes how you feel, exactly like my therapist does with me every Tuesday. I'm not really a fan of this as it takes agency away from the player. You have a few more options to choose from at least, so I guess there's that. The voice acting and script could use a bit of work too. The combat is where you see the biggest changes now. It feels simultaneously more action orientated, but somehow more strategic at the same time. There is a top-down mode where you can survey the battlefield and line up actions. I've heard rumours this mode was actually in the previous games, but they didn't make it very clear, so who knows. To find out, I'd have to spend 15 seconds doing a Google search, so it's not worth the effort. And there is just a few pedantic things that keep this game from being even better in my opinion. You can jump now, but they have an invisible wall that stops you from going anywhere interesting, placing you back in the map. The looting animation is needlessly long, since you do this thousands of times in a single playthrough. The music and score is very average. It's there, but I didn't really notice it. And not in a I'm so absorbed into the game kind of way, in a is there actually any music here kind of way. Although I love that whoever designed these guys obviously had fun with it, you can just tell the conversation went something like, "Hi, Bill, we need some corpses after the explosion to show how metal and devastating this blast was." And Bill, the designer, was like, "Don't worry, boss, I got you."
Flames from the eyes.
7 out of 10. Game 118. Dragon Ball FighterZ. I used to watch Dragon Ball Z on Cartoon Network as a kid. I can remember being in awe as Goku and Frieza were having that final battle for what felt like an eternity. I later found out that's because it was. The fight, without talking, lasts for 1 hour and 38 minutes. With talking, it was a little over 2.5 hours. Since an episode was just over 20 minutes long, no wonder I never saw the fight end. Anyway, I should probably talk about the game rather than my childhood traumas. Dragon Ball FighterZ, as you may have guessed, is a fighting game where you play as a spirit that has possessed Goku's body and fight clones of the main characters. Goku, Piccolo, and the rest of the ones I don't know. Sure, it's a bit weird, but I think the implication is that you, the player, have possessed Goku, since, you know, you play as him, which is a fun way of giving you agency, I guess. The aim of the game is to get to the end of the level on a grid, moving a space at a time, occasionally fighting some goons. The fighting itself feels quite fluid, the majority of moves aren't overly complex, with a few complex moves for better players to exercise their skills. I didn't feel very engaged playing though. The story I thought was bizarre and I didn't care too much about why these events were actually going on. The gameplay is quite fun, smooth and looks good while playing, but not enough to keep me invested. 5 out of 10. Game 119, Dragon Quest Builders 2. This is a sandbox building game based in the Dragon Quest universe. Think Minecraft meets Animal Crossing New Horizons and you've pretty much got the game. The main menu beat absolutely slaps though. Close your eyes and it's like you're in the best elevator ride of your life. The pacing of the tutorial was really nice. You start as a captive on a ship and the crew that have captured you unintentionally teach you how to play the game in a cute way. The controls and UI are really natural and unobtrusive. Prompts really subtly keep you reminded of the controls. It feels like a pleasure to play. You get stranded on an island and have to gather resources to survive, and that's about as far as I played. There's a narrative alongside this too. One of the characters you wake up with on the island is called Malroth. Here he is. Malroth, as the crewmates tell you, is basically an evil god. But the Malroth you wake up with seems like a nice guy. He can't be the same, right? Then he tells you he's got amnesia, implying that maybe this is the evil guy. But since he doesn't remember, yeah, he'll help you cut some grass. It's an awesome idea done well. Overall, 8 out of 10. Game 120, Dreamscaper. Another roguelike game where you delve into the dreams of the main character, whose name escaped me, but that's not really important in this game. Your character doesn't even have a face. You fight through hordes of enemies, room to room in dreams, finding weapons and power-ups, the usual roguelike formula. Where Dreamscaper stands out is the usual areas for a roguelike, the art style, and its own intricacies like bosses, and the hub world / overworld, which is in fact the messy room of our resident dreamer. The overall experience just feels really polished and very cared for. The opening scroll of the game is a message from the developers thanking all the players and how it means so much to them as an indie studio, which is nice. And they've paid it back well in a well-designed and balanced game, with a narrative in the background that is mysterious and compelling enough to keep you delving into the dream world over and over. 8 out of 10. Game 121, The Dungeon of Nahul Buk, The Amulet of Chaos, Chicken Edition. I don't really check the reviews of these games before or after I play because I don't want to be influenced by what other people think. I try to be objective and solely give the account about how I feel from playing these games. I broke this rule for this game, of which I won't say the title again, since it's long as hell and I don't think I'm pronouncing it correctly. I did this because I thought the game might be divisive and I wanted to see if anyone else thought the same as me. Turns out, people love this game, and it's just me. Oh well. This is a party dungeon crawler. You're looking for treasure and killing things in the dungeon to get it. Simple. The main draws to this game seem to be the combat system and the goofy dynamic between the party members. Each member has their own personality. The thief is a coward, the ogre is an idiot, the elf is a good-looking idiot, and other stereotypes for the rest of the party. I found the stereotypical dynamic quite dull. They behave exactly how you'd expect them to, and the interactions between party members I found to be more annoying than funny. The combat is a strategic turn-based system that is quite involved. The tutorial throws a lot of information at you quite quickly, and given the complexity of the system, it felt quite jarring rather than fun. I'm sure once you play for multiple hours, you'll get used to it, but for a new player, I don't want to feel like I have to play for about 10 hours before I actually understand how to play the game. 6 out of 10. Game 122, EA Sports UFC 3. I haven't played a fighting game since SmackDown vs Raw 2006, so it will be hard for UFC 3 to live up to that, since, you know, it's the best game of all time. From the very beginning, it starts with an unskippable intro that just sucks Conor McGregor's dick for a few minutes, so I already hate this. That being said, as I got into the first fight and I was landing hit after hit, I was actually on my feet shouting at my screen as I knocked this dude out. It was just really exciting, and as someone who doesn't watch much combat sport, I finally got the appeal. If the game was this moment alone, it would have been 10 out of 10, but it's not SmackDown vs Raw 2006, so let's be real. It got old very quick, and it got pretty formulaic the more fights I did. Really exciting for the first fight, but that died very quickly. I thought maybe I'd try career mode. As I'm someone that has several thousand games played in FIFA career mode, I thought maybe I'd just enjoy the progression a bit more. And I like the idea of starting as a rookie fighter, but I couldn't even beat the first fight. There is a training mode, but I thought there would be some kind of difficulty curve at least. 6 out of 10. Game 123. Eastward. A top-down sprite-styled RPG, the pacing in the opening of this game threw me for a loop. The opening scroll talks about princesses and knights, and then the game starts and you play as this guy. You live in a trailer and have a frying pan. Your first quest is to get to work at the dig site without being late, which I found difficult as the level, while interesting and detailed, was difficult to navigate. I thought that tunnels would link areas, but turns out they don't, they're just caves. In actuality, it's these signs that show you can move across different screens, but I didn't feel that this was very intuitive, which, with movement between screens underpinning a core concept of the game, this doesn't bode well. The combat and puzzle tutorial is centered around killing slugs at a dig site and rerouting electricity to open doors. And it's okay, but it just wasn't very enthralling for a tutorial. The game looks really nice, but the sound design is lacking and going to work wasn't the most fun way to start a game. I would talk about the dialogue speed as the default is very slow, but you can change this from the options, so I won't fault it there. I get the feeling this game is a lot deeper than I'm giving it credit for, and it would be fun maybe, but I'm not having enough fun in the early game just to push through to that point. 4 out of 10. Game 124. Edge of Eternity. Another JRPG. The setting of this game is that humans make first contact, but the aliens actually turn out to be friendly. They share technology, knowing it's a JRPG, they probably shared some other things too. And then one day, the aliens decided, okay, we bad now. No explanation, okay. Seems a bit weak narratively, but maybe that's something you uncover as the game progresses.
Oversized two-handed swords, right? Who in their right mind would use such a stupid weapon?
Yeah, who the fuck would use a weapon like that? The battle mechanics I like. It's a turn-based system based on a grid, where you're able to attack enemies based on your position in the grid. For example, mages can cast spells from afar, whereas melee characters must be on a tile adjacent to an enemy in order to attack them. Turns are not sequential, they're based on this action bar filling up, so whoever's bar is full gets to take their turn. Using their turn uses space on the bar, and once it's depleted, your turn is over. I like this, it's a bit different and not something I've come across before. I imagine there's probably moves or capacity to make your enemy's bar feel slower, or buff your party to make yours feel faster. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just seems like a missed opportunity if I am. Other than that, attacks, magic, items, special moves are all intuitive in the battle menu, and speaking of which, the battle menu UI is nice and just feels so nice to play with, which is good because you'll be seeing a lot of it. I think they were going for an anime-inspired look on some of these characters with the whole big head and eyes things, but it just looks really weird sometimes. There's some pretty cringy writing. I guess, like I say, it's meant to be anime-inspired, much like the characters, but it just looks and sounds weird. So you get an achievement for finishing the first battle, which I looked at the stats of, and apparently over half of players didn't even do. Not really a good sign. Overall, it feels like an average turn-based RPG with its own spin on turn-based combat. 6 out of 10. Game 125. Eiyuden Chronicle. Rising. This is a 2D side-scrolling RPG game. Visually, it's really nice to look at. The world is 3D with 2D sprites populating it. The two actually complement each other quite nicely. We play as the adventurer CJ. We find treasure, fight bandits, all pretty normal, right? But you're wrong. Bureaucracy in this world has gone mad. Selling your treasures has a 30% tax rate. The elites are killing us. And you need a license to explore. What is this? North Korea? Someone calls your names? Apparently, just tax them more as a punishment. The opening of this game is quite simple. You're just a kid, finding their way in the world, doing a few jobs to help out a local town. I can vibe with a cozy setting. Combat is simple. You press X to attack and right trigger for your special move. And that's it. Nothing else to it. Sometimes you'll jump, sometimes you'll dodge area attacks, sometimes simple game mechanics will trump complex and involved, and for this game, this is one of those occasions. Dungeon areas are separate to the main world, so if you die, your consequence is losing progress in it. I'd critique it for there being too much walking, but it turns out there's a fast travel system to pretty much any screen you've already been to, except in dungeons where you can only travel to signposts. Blocked areas of the dungeons are a contextual way to show that you're going to come back here later. I'm not a big fan of backtracking, but at least it kind of hints at more to come. Overall, this was pretty fun. 8 out of 10. Okay, I'm going to go on a quick tangent. It's my series, I'll do what I want. The next 3 games are Elder Scrolls Morrowind, Skyrim, and Online. Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion is on the Game Pass, but way down over here. Now, I had an internal debate whether to play this now or when I get to the letter O, since the game title is O, and for whatever reason they didn't add Elder Scrolls as a prefix. I decided I'm going to stick with the order of the games in the Game Pass and play it later. Game 126, Elder Scrolls 3, Morrowind. Another original Xbox game, this one from the year 2002. This game has a lasting legacy, eventually leading to Fallout, Skyrim, and generally just influencing modern day RPGs. But casting that aside, is this still a good game? In character creation, there isn't really a lot of info about what any of this means. To be fair, it was kind of expected that you'd read the manual back in the day, so I won't fault it too much here, but obviously you don't get a manual in the Game Pass version, so that kinda sucks. You talk to a few guys, sign a few papers, and then like Taylor Swift says, you're on your own, kid. Literally. You have no quest markers, nothing to show you where to go next. Just your journal saying go to Balmora. You want to find out where that is? Well, you better go ask someone or read some street signs. This is how RPGs were back in the day. I think there is something to be said for having this level of immersion, and I think modern games could benefit by having this as an option that you can turn on. Everyone just walks around like they've shit themselves. On my journey to Balmora, I found a cave and got my first taste of combat. I won't lie to you, this has not aged well. I freed some slaves and got some armor as a reward. I don't know if this encounter was part of a quest line or just a random encounter, but I liked it all the same.
This is where they want you. Head down to the dock and I'll show you to the census office.
Wait a second. I know that voice.
You mark my words, this entire party is a trap.
That's crazy that some of the voice actors from Morrowind are the same as in Oblivion. It's crazy that this came out in 2002. It doesn't look like much now, but the scale of this then would have been enormous. I think I'd give this another shot, maybe on PC though so I can download a few quality of life mods. 7 out of 10. Game 127, Elder Scrolls 5, Skyrim, Special Edition. This game has been memed to death, so I'll try not to participate. Hey, I only said I'd try. Skyrim is, well, it's Skyrim. There's something like 50 editions of it now, so you've probably played at least one. Skyrim came out on 11/11/11. I remember this because I was hyped as fuck. The trailer had dropped, the graphics looked amazing, there was dragons, Harry Partridge had dropped an animation about it, so you knew it was a big deal. Then it dropped and really opened up action RPGs to a lot of people. You play as the Dragonborn, an adventurer with the unique ability that only you can kill dragons. Other than that, become a mage, join a coup over the government, become a werewolf, pretty much do whatever you want. And admittedly, there was a few bumps in the road along the way. There was a few visual bugs, and actual bugs, and full-on game-breaking bugs. Sometimes, these bugs would even all come together. An early bug in Skyrim is that during the intro cutscene, sometimes the cart and horse would just fly hundreds of feet into the air. They discovered this was because the in-game bees would fly into the cart, and the collision just bugged out, sending the cart flying. The UI is cumbersome and slow, but I guess it works and is simple to navigate. Outside of that, combat and powers are fluid and customizable through the enchanting skills to beef you up or just break the game entirely. It's really friendly to new players. The tutorial introduces a lot of concepts without being too in your face. There's mod support on console in case you wanna, mod. But really, I think it's just incredible that we went from this to this in 9 years. The time between Skyrim first releasing and now is longer than the time between Morrowind and Skyrim. And people can still pick it up and have a good time without the hurdles of a game like Morrowind. With a few teething problems in the middle. It's not a perfect experience, but it's still probably one of the best experiences you'll have from the Game Pass. 10 out of 10. Game 128, The Elder Scrolls Online. Despite my rave review of Elder Scrolls 5, I've never actually played this or Fallout 76, as I dismissed them as cheap attempts to capitalise on the hype around Skyrim and Fallout. The main menu theme kind of sounds like the sound engineer hadn't actually made a song, and then a few days before shipping the game, he was getting shouted at across the office by his boss, saying they need a theme while he was just watching Pirates of the Caribbean instead. And instead of mixing the track, he thought, you know what, I can combine Skyrim and Pirates of the Caribbean. Boom, main menu song. They ask if you're over 13, then ask you to confirm if you read the T's and C's. Are they really getting 14-year-olds to sign contracts to play video games now? Look at this cute little music note under the title. Like any MMORPG, you design your character, choose your backstory or faction. Pick a suitable name and away you go. You start with a tutorial, giving you the basics of leveling, skills, equipment, fighting, and a bit of lore. Something about the Daedra, basically demons in the Elder Scrolls universe, opening portals and invading. Wait a minute, that sounds kinda familiar.
Find him and close shut the jaws of oblivion.
I'm also not surprised this is happening, since they got the marker from friggin' Dead Space up in here. After learning the basics, the game gives you a few portals to choose from to start your adventure. They have some suggestions about what to do, but really you can go ahead and just choose any place to go. Except half the doors in here won't open for you, but let's just move on. Fighting is more traditional RPG, bringing back skills and talents to the hotkeys on the bumpers and X and Y. And fighting feels a tad more rigid, but I guess that's probably a limitation of being an MMO. Once you're spewed out into the world, there's a main storyline you can follow, crafting and skills you can master, PvP modes, or just explore and socialise with other players. It's an MMO, that's the idea, after all. I didn't play for too long, but I think this is actually an MMO I could get into, though I wasn't completely hooked by the time I stopped. 7 out of 10. Game 129. Empire of Sin. This is a team and property management game with a bit of turn-based combat. The premise is you're a crime boss in the 1920s American Prohibition era, trying to get control of the city. Select your character, don't mind the bodies hanging out in the background here, and then start your empire. Of Sin. Conversation in the talking sections of this game is extremely wooden, like really bad, and the hub world is just really jank. There is a bit of team management in equipping your crew with guns and taking over territories in a turn-based combat style raid, which, while mildly fun, I didn't quite understand the intricacies of, and I don't think the game explained this section very well either. I only played for a short amount of time and encountered quite a few bugs, like this one on the map screen. Overall, this just feels like a mobile game which was eventually ported to consoles. 5 out of 10. Game 130. Escape Academy. Starting out, I was unsure if this was a dating sim or an escape the room game. The advice to keep a pencil or paper handy is a nice touch. It reminds me of the old school puzzle games where you actually had to make real life notes to keep track of things. Like Myst. God, I love that game. I love this controls waiver, that's pretty cool. The premise is you've gone to an escape room and you need to solve the puzzles to escape. I don't know anyone who goes to an escape room by themselves, but that's neither here nor there. I've been to some escape rooms in real life, so I thought I did a pretty good job solving the simple puzzles in the first room. No big deal. Then the game got pretty good. It really subverted my expectations. Very quickly, you figure out that something more is going on here. The front door is locked, and there's notes about you lying around the office. Then you find a literal red herring. This really made me laugh, because if you don't know, a red herring is a literary device used to distract you from something else. There's something fishy going on here. Aha, behind the fish. Turns out, the first level is basically the admissions test to the Hogwarts of escape rooms. Not kidding. You go to school, and your first test is to escape the room in 15 minutes while memory erasing gas, aka poison, fills the room. Hey, I know this guy. I love the visual style. The success noise when you solve a puzzle is a bit annoying, but not too intrusive. Your character looks weird AF. I really like this game, and I really want to play the rest of it. Also, it has a co-op mode. I didn't play it, but hey, it's there. 9 out of 10. Game 131. Evil Genius 2. World Domination. Start the game and choose your evil options. This is a simulation and base building game where you play as an evil genius, build your evil island, recruit your evil minions, and send them on the evilest of missions to make that sweet, sweet evil cash in your bid for world domination. It's a fun concept and plays relatively well. Apart from the setting though, there isn't too much special about this. It's just a simulation base building game. 6 out of 10. Game 132. The Evil Within. This is a horror game from survival horror pioneer Shinji Mikami, the guy who directed the first Resident Evil game and Dino Crisis games. What the fuck is this font? I mean, my real initial impression is that this game just looks like Alan Wake. Ugh, I like this blood falling effect, that's a cool little detail. But I got stuck in a room with the first enemy for 20 minutes and 56 seconds, dying over and over because I couldn't see this little shiny key behind the Hulk here. This hospital kind of reminds me of Looney Tunes. Following escaping the first room, you get a long limping and climbing sequence pretty early on in the game, and I think this is probably supposed to make you feel weak and powerless, but it actually just kind of takes all tension out and makes you really bored. The art design is really good though, which I think is what most people will want from this game, but the story is a bit convoluted, and if you told me this was just a Silent Hill game, I would have believed you, so it doesn't feel like it has its own identity. 6 out of 10. Game 133. The Evil Within 2. It's always good to start your games with a close-up image of a low-res texture. Okay, this next stream of sentences is going to sound very crazy, but this really is the game as simple as I can explain it. You start the game with your family home on fire. That's what you get for going with the cheapest contractor. Turns out, this was all a dream. What are they putting in those drinks? You are Sebastian, and your daughter has been kidnapped by these guys, who are some people, they don't really explain. They take you to this thing called the STEM environment, which is kind of like the Matrix. G-Man from Half-Life is the bad guy. You get plugged into the Matrix and the title screen all at once. You run through the dark until a police office materializes around you. If that sounds confusing, you're 100% correct. It is. This police office actually kind of acts like a safe room, and I like this idea. It gives the player a bit of a break. I don't know if you can come back here, but I hope you can. The shopkeeper rooms in Resident Evil 4 do the same, or daytime areas in Silent Hill, or the shop in Dead Space. It's important to give the player a break sometimes, and keep the game fun, rather than just stressful the entire time. The environments are great, and so much better than Evil Within 1. It's the kind of horror that I think is good. It's not just a spooky house, it's not just a complete clusterfuck of horrific details. It's somewhere in between. It's elegant, yet also terrifying. I don't like the main character Sebastian's walking speed though. It's too slow and makes you feel vulnerable, whereas the sprint feels too fast, like you might miss stuff. Actually, now I say that out loud, that might be by design, to try and stop the player from sprinting everywhere and missing things, thereby making them slow down and actually have to face the horror. I'll think about that one. I love the design of the first boss enemy you encounter. You don't get too good of a glimpse at it, but whatever it is, you think, Jesus, that looks horrifying. It's dumb that this dweeb survives and the guy who's actually competent in combat dies, but apart from that, 8 out of 10. It's a much stronger intro than the first game. Game 134. Evil. I played Among Us in the last part. Evil just seems like Among Us, but with extra steps. You're a villager in the Middle Ages, and you go about your day. During the night, another player will try to kill you. When a body is found, you ring the town murder bell and then vote on who to execute for the murder. You can do a few side quests to get some gold and buy items that can help, and set traps to try and kill the murderer too. So it's a little bit more fleshed out. I got kicked from a bunch of games for not having a mic because I didn't want to socialise. On the matchmaking lobby, I could only find 4 active games, for a total of 23 players online, including myself, and that was with crossplay. If you've only got 23 players on all platforms playing, you've probably got a dead game. I appreciate how it's trying to flesh out something like Among Us, but I'm not going to convince my friends all to get evil just to play this game, and I'm not going to join a bunch of randoms. 2 out of 10. Game 135. EXO 1. I'll preface with a little disclaimer. This game is boring, but in the best way. It's boring, but it's like going for a walk in the woods boring. You're a ball, you roll around planets, and sometimes glide in the sky. That's pretty much everything, and I really liked it. 9 out of 10. Game 136. F1 2020 and Game 137. F1 2021. I'm putting these games together for one reason. You tell me the difference between these two. Even the covers look like they came from the same photo shoot. They're pretty much identical, although 2021 had a better menu system, and I think included a story mode that I don't think 2020 had. They're pretty fun racing games at their cores. There is a good attempt at realism, letting you access the on-car computer to see damage and diagnostics on your car, and send messages to your race engineers, all that F1 goodness. Driving is really fun, cars look and handle great, a rewind feature lets you start again from anywhere along the last 20 seconds or so, which even other games like Forza can't do properly, making you start from predetermined points. I haven't enjoyed a racing game as much as this since Forza Motorsport 2. 7 out of 10 for both. Game 138. Fable Anniversary. I like this game. A lot. If you want to see how much, watch my 20-minute video talking about how much I like it. In short, the setting is a fantasy medieval Britain. The world is even called Albion, an ancient name for the British Isles. It's a third-person adventure game with a focus on questing and playing things your way, which it does by introducing a morality system. This system influences how your player looks, how people will respond to you, and the outcomes of your choices will influence the world around you. Most importantly, it has chicken kicking. The world design and writing is what sets Fable apart from just being a generic adventure game. The world is immersive and extremely detailed. The people act, well, like people. And the game is just really funny. One of your first quests lets you watch a cheating husband get chewed out by his wife when she finds out about his adultery.
My mother was right about you!
Combat is pretty simple. You have a melee attack, range attack, and a couple of spells that you can use in real-time combat. And as far as remakes go, this one's done okay. There was a few textures popping, the menu redesign wasn't very good, and it reuses some assets from the original 2004 game. Overall, I give it 7 out of 10. Game 139. Fable 2. This is very much like the original Fable, only set in the Victorian/industrial era. It essentially takes a lot from the first game and has just made everything better. The writing and story is more fleshed out, the world is bigger for you to explore and find things off the beaten path, your choices are more impactful, although not very well explained like in the first. Core gameplay, your melee, shooting and magic is expanded upon, with a simpler upgrade system than the leveling system included in the first game, and you get a dog that you can pet, play fetch with, and he'll alert you to secrets nearby, which is pretty cool. There's some nice throwbacks to Fable 1, like the horribly bad menus and frame rate drops, but overall, it's a rare sequel that is arguably better than the original. 9 out of 10. Game 140. Fable 3. I am an equal opportunities channel. In Fable 2, we were a boy, so in this one, we're a girl. If you can't tell, birds/fowl are a reoccurring theme in Fable. I can't think of a reason why off the top of my head, other than maybe it's just kind of funny. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the whole reason, to be honest. Oh, that C does not look good. Your character is voiced now, a big departure from other Fable games where they just kind of grunt all the time. And you now have a dedicated hold hand button. That's kind of creepy actually. The chicken is okay, thank God. You have to make a lot of moral choices quite early on in this game, but most are very black and white, which is actually another game by the same studio. The game makes it clear that morality is important, but most of these choices just boil down to either be nice or be a complete dick. There's no in between or multiple consequences of your actions. Instead of a pause menu, you now have this thing called the Sanctuary. It's a kind of fully playable menu and pause room. This makes the game a lot more interactive, and it's not really a bad thing since menus weren't always Fable's strong suit. To use magic, you now have to get this gauntlet thing, which I really don't like. Overall, it just suggests that your character is weaker than the previous heroes before you, and it makes no sense story-wise. The idea is that your character can't channel their hero bloodline without it, I guess. Despite the fact that your character's dad was the hero from Fable 2, he could do it despite being removed from the hero bloodline by about 500 years. Why can't your Fable 3 character do it after maybe 30-40 years? I'm probably just overanalyzing at this point. Humour seems less of a focus in Fable 3. It's more situational rather than overt, and that doesn't seem like Fable's style. The previous two games were slapstick and in your face with how ridiculous the world is, and that just doesn't come across here. It does look the best though. Fabric moves well, although some faces do kind of look like porcelain dolls. Your dog, once again, is a good boy. The main motivation in the game is to do missions for groups to convince them to join a rebellion against your dick brother who is the king. Oh shit, what up? Gameplay is very simplified. In Fable 1 and 2 you'd have a variety of weapons and armor pieces and plenty shops with a variety of items. Shops now have maybe 3 or 4 items per shop, and a massive reduction in the amount of gear you can choose from. There just isn't enough here to get excited about that wasn't already in Fable 1 and 2. In fact, in places there's even less. For a game released in 2010, a year before Skyrim, it feels shallow. The next game coming up in around 15 seconds came out in 2008 and it feels a lot deeper and does a lot of the same concepts executed so much better. 5 out of 10. Game 141. Fallout 3. Much like when all of my problems started, this starts with being born. Another RPG from Bethesda, name your character a suitably appropriate name and it's time to take on the world. Nobody penned me in, I'm Taggy Sit. Fallout 3 is an FPS RPG based in a world where nuclear apocalypse has happened and society hasn't progressed past the 50s. Except for technology, you've got plenty robots and lasers lying around. You are a vault dweller, someone who has survived by living in an underground vault. Everyone else outside, well, they weren't so lucky, put it that way. Shooting, fighting, and conversations are a bit janky. Where Fallout excels is in world building, writing, and most of all, giving you agency to make choices with consequences. And it does this well, something that the Fable games, which I've compared the morality system to, often fell down in. You have plenty conversation options to really let you direct a conversation how you think is appropriate. Like beating up another kid at your birthday party. It's got some slapstick humour going on at points, and your dad is Liam Neeson. What's not to love?
Enjoy your party. You're only 10 once, so have fun.
The tutorial is long and unskippable. It would be much better if you could just have a shortcut to skip straight past it. Long story short, you have some disagreements with the Vault Leader and go outside for the first time in your life. Ah, fresh air. I bet this outside place is going to be great. This is it? This reveal is great, and then you can decide where you want to go next. The world is yours. Or you can just go to Megaton and kill everyone. 9 out of 10. Game 142. Fallout 4. As the sequel to Fallout 3, you can expect pretty much more of the same. For a change of pace, this time you start the game before the nuclear apocalypse, so that's cool. This whole conversation is great.
Go away.
The character creation system is cool. Being in front of your bathroom mirror and swapping with your character's wife or husband to choose your gender is a nice touch. Immediately I'm disappointed by the dialogue wheel. We've gone from a lot of different options to dumbed down 4 dialogue wheel options. Usually this just being a good response, bad response, sarcastic response, or exposition response. It's not 2007, you can do better than this. At least the set pieces are better. Gameplay wise, it's more refined than Fallout 3. Fighting and overall movement feels so much more fluid, but it's still very much the same concept. Run around, shoot things, sometimes punch them. Overall, it has the same criticism I levy at some other sequels. It just feels like a dumbed down version of the previous game. Like the treatment between Morrowind to Oblivion and Oblivion to Skyrim, which was fine for those games, and I rated them well because they also innovated in other ways to make the game more enjoyable. Fallout 4 feels like they stripped out some things they thought were cumbersome, and then just thought, if they made it look nicer, people will buy it anyway, without adding any new features to replace those that were stripped out. And I guess it sold really well, so maybe they were right. Also, I'm nitpicking, but your character's voice is so annoying and really not well written. Also, the game completely bugged for me, and I couldn't speak to this character I needed to speak to in order to progress the story, so that sucks. Also, the story just kinda sucks in general. It's just a boring, your son has been kidnapped plot and you need to find him. 6 out of 10. Game 143, Fallout 76. This is an MMORPG based in the Fallout universe. Basically, Fallout 4 as an MMO. Much like the Elder Scrolls Online, this game got memed to death when it came out. It was an absolute broken mess of a game. So much so, they literally made it free, because no one was buying it. There was also so much controversy around how Bethesda handled this steaming fly-covered turd. So I never played it. Is it any good now? Let's start with the title. It's Fallout 76. You're from Vault 76. 76 was the year of the founding of the US. Boom. Exposition. Yep, I'd say that looks like me. Choose a suitable name, you get the gist of this by now. Choose a suitable photo, and we're in Fallout 76. It's the same Fallout gameplay. Run around in first or third person, shoot some things, and have conversations. There's some graphical glitches and freaky doll-faced NPCs which look terrible. Other than that, I mean, yeah, there's some other players here, and I had a bit of a crouch party, which was really fun. But the start of the game was just really boring. Your missions are dull, and the areas you go to are even duller. The first missions are literally, go here, come back. I did find a minigame that was probably the most fun I had playing, however. 10 out of 10 for Nuka Tapper, 5 out of 10 for Fallout 76. Game 144, Fallout New Vegas. Yeah, so I've played this before, what of it? If you don't know what these are, then you're too young. Name?
I can't say it's what I'd have picked for you, but if that's your name, that's your name.
Fuck you. Fallout New Vegas is a spin-off game developed by Obsidian Entertainment instead of Bethesda, and it really shows. This only came out 18 months after Fallout 3, and so a lot of the content and gameplay is almost identical to Fallout 3. Some of the same assets are even used, but the game has taken a different direction. Instead of the soppy looking for my dad's story of Fallout 3, this game feels more like a western, where you're the drifter going from town to town, and it works really well. I mean, in the opening of the game, you get shot in the face and spend half the game trying to track down the person who tried to kill you. Also, the guy that shoots you in the face is played by Matthew Perry. So if you've ever watched Friends, you too would have also dreamt about killing Matthew Perry. Fallout New Vegas lets you live that dream. It shows from the start. Once you make your character and go to therapy, you can leave the house and pretty much go anywhere in about 5 minutes of starting, compared to the hour or so start of Fallout 3. Go and get eaten by a pack of wild dogs. Go nuts. New Vegas also brings back factions from Fallout 2. These are different groups all vying for control of New Vegas, the post-apocalyptic Las Vegas, and you can help, hinder, destroy, or even ignore all of them and just take over the city yourself. There's just so much more variety in dialogue and ways to build your character that didn't really exist in Fallout 3, which is a great game, but this is just even better. 10 out of 10. Game 145. Far Cry 5. I haven't played a Far Cry game since Far Cry 3, not since I was 3. 2 was also great with its malaria simulator and all that. On the character selection screen, I didn't even know this was a menu, so that's just plain bad UI design there. I like in the intro this mobile phone footage effect. That's pretty impressive and immersive. This is an open world FPS game where you're a Fed sent to arrest the head of a sovereign state cult leader in rural USA. And in true to life fashion, the Feds screw it up and end up getting a bunch of people killed. It's even worse because the main antagonist looks like his worst crime is just getting shitty tattoos and brewing craft beer. I mean, he's got a man bun for God's sake. As soon as you get control of your character, I got lost in the woods and ended up going back on myself. completely removing all sense of urgency and panic the game was trying to create at the start. This was then followed by a moderately repetitive gun chase scene. I will give credit where it's due. There is some really well animated eye and body movements in the cutscenes. The story does leave much to be desired though, and from the feel of things it just seems like Far Cry 2 and 3 did back when I played those 10 years ago. Which in some ways is a good thing. These games play well, combat and exploring is fun, but it really doesn't feel like they've innovated much in the decade they've had. It's just not enough for a whole game. 6 out of 10. Game 146. Far. Changing Tides. First of all, drink more water. Real homies make sure their homies are hydrated. This is a game about water, if the title didn't give it away. And it's really nice looking water. Check out that water, damn. The transition between the water and surface is a bit jarring though, but maybe that's kind of the point. You know, if I fell into the ocean, I imagine I'd be pretty disorientated too. Right away, you're presented with this whole mystery about what has happened. You're a kid swimming side to side on a screen. Everything is covered in water. What has happened? I assume a flood or tornado, but where's everyone else? Ultimately, this is a platformer where the story is to drive you forward to discover more, with a sailing aspect when you find a boat. There were some obstacles that required climbing ladders, and these were kind of difficult to actually climb, which is bad because since there's one on the boat, you'll do this a lot. You eventually see a living thing, a deer, which kind of gave me more questions than answers really. I feel there is just too much waiting in this game. I would put my controller down for long periods of time while sailing. And while the scenery and music is nice, it's not compelling enough to actually make the game not boring. 3 out of 10. Game 147. Farming Simulator 2022. Alright fuckers, you've been waiting for this. This intro has made me want to quit my life and become a farmer, holy shit. I jumped into this game without doing the tutorial and it was a terrible idea. I didn't know how to do a single thing. So I started again and actually played the tutorial. Now we're in business. As the title suggests, you run a farm and get to enjoy all the little intricacies of that. Let me suck up all your little wheat. Oh shit, my wheat. For all the jobs you can do, ploughing, harvesting, etc., you can actually and are encouraged to hire AI workers to do this for you, which I guess is actually probably more reflective of real farming than you would think, since, you know, you'd hire farmhands. But because of that, I guess you're kind of incentivized to not actually play the game, just hire farmhands and watch your money go up. Apart from driving places, which is boring in itself, there isn't actually much to do, and I think I'd actually play Far Changing Tides before I play this again, so I'll have to rate this one lower. 2 out of 10. Game 148. Fee, Iron, Fair, one of those. This platformer adventure game is gorgeous. You're this little fox thing and your forest is under attack by these weird creatures. Naturally, you're a fox, so you can't talk. Instead, you make fox noises and traverse the forest, making fox noises at all the other animals to get them to help you. It's adorable. The music accompanies the gameplay so well, and the world is just so fun to explore. You can climb trees and glide across open plains, sing at mushrooms and watch them react, sing at other animals and get them to open pathways for you to secret areas. There's definitely something more going on with this game. Eventually you find something that lets you see through the enemy's eyes, and all you really want to do is figure out what the hell is going on. I found a few graphical bugs, but overall it's just a really nice looking game, and movement is really sharp. Overall, it's a very fun and unique experience, executed well. Game 149. Feeding Frenzy. Now this was an old Flash game in the mid-2000s. I actually remember playing this on Internet Explorer before the Xbox 360 even came out. It's a really simple concept. You eat fish by swimming around the screen. This gets you points and makes you grow bigger, so you can eat even bigger fish and get bigger points. Repeat this with different fish over 50 levels or so, and that's the entire game. I'm actually glad these games are on the Game Pass, to be honest. It's nice to have a bit of variety. You even get little fish facts at the end of every stage. Did you know that? Did you? Didn't think so. I mean, it's kind of fun. Probably a good way to spend an hour or so if you want an easy game just to breeze through. Or something to pick up and drop again very quickly. I mean, it's not going to light the world on fire though. 5 out of 10. Game 150. Feeding Frenzy 2. Shipwreck Showdown. Feeding Frenzy 1 was so badass they made a sequel. It's more or less the same game, but boasts more fish, stages, better visuals, and boom! Now with co-op. There's also some party games to play for a bit more variety. So you know what, I'll give this one 6 out of 10 for the improvements. Speaking of games that have improvements between sequels, let's move on to 2 games which don't do that. Game 151, FIFA 21, and Game 152, FIFA 22. Once again, I'm lumping these 2 games in together because you go ahead and tell me which is which from this side by side. The game, as always, is its usual self. The gameplay is similar between them, there's some minor differences between the two, but really, they are just essentially the same game. There's a few extra game modes like Volta Football, which is essentially a street football minigame, and of course there is Ultimate Team, which is the flagship game mode these days, where you buy card packs to get rare players or cards and face off against other players. You can use in-game currency, which takes years to earn, or spend real money and get the rare cards in 5 minutes. This intro cinematic is some cringe-worthy stuff. It features some real-life footballers, and they pretty much act as well as you expect from a real footballer. You know what? I lied. There is actually a new game mode. In FIFA 22, now you can run through the street. 5 out of 10 for both. Game 153. Fight Night Champion. This is a boxing game that I expected very little from, and was pleasantly surprised. It is a good game, man. It's a story-driven boxing game where you play as an up-and-coming boxer. And while the story is moderately interesting, the fighting is just fun as hell. You can play offensive or defensive, controls are simple, allowing you to aim high or low, play a more arcade style using the action buttons on the controller, or use more complex and chain moves together using the right stick. I just loved fighting in this game, and getting knockouts made me jump out from my seat. 10 out of 10. Game 154. Floppy Nights. Maybe I'm being cynical, but Floppy Nights is just another Yu-Gi-Oh card, Digimon, Poké turn-based tactical game or something like that. After Dicey Dungeons from earlier, I'm a bit burnt out on these kinds of games, and really the art style seems extremely similar to that, and the gameplay reminds me of it heavily, so it doesn't feel very unique. The humour and writing even feels the same. At least my parents are somewhat supportive. Each level is a grid, and you use your turns to fight enemies, using your moves, which are cards, and all this uses stamina, of which you have a limited amount per turn. Some tiles on the grid act like buffs. For example, the forest will give you a shield. You build your deck to make it stronger and more to your playstyle, but like I say, I'm a bit jaded by games like this at the moment. Maybe if I hadn't played others like it, I'd be more excited, but I'm not finding it very enthralling. It seems like a good game, don't get me wrong, it's just not for me. 5 out of 10. Game 155. Football Manager 2023 console. I like football, but this was just slow and boring. And it's 2023, this is the best you could make it look? Really? I like football a lot, but this just doesn't scratch that managerial itch I have. 3 out of 10. Game 156. For Honor. Marching Fire Edition. For Honor is a fighting/action game which focuses more on slow and strategic combat, rather than button mashing. I'm not so into PvP these days, and I'm sure I'd get my arse handed to me, so story mode it is. Combat is based around your stance, and you switch this in order to break your opponent's defense. It makes fighting a battle of skill and timing, rather than just who hit who first. It's well designed and really rewarding to win, but not too complicated that it's inaccessible. Outside of fighting, there's actually a narrative, at least in the medieval story I chose, and there's also Vikings and samurai stories, so there's plenty game to sink your teeth into even if you're not into PvP like me. When you're not fighting, there are contextual parts of the environment that you can interact with, such as observation points for some more background into the world. Visually, the game just looked great. But most importantly, you run like a normal person, none of that turn 180 degrees in 3 milliseconds crap. 8 out of 10. Game 157. Forager. Forager is a 2D crafting, farming style adventure game. The art design and visuals are very easy on the eyes, and the UI works so damn well. I was seriously impressed with how intuitive and smooth the interfaces all were. The idea is just to craft, farm, fish, and expand your little island, and level up some skills as you do. I thought I'd seen most of what the game had to offer within the first hour, but then I bought some more land and was pleasantly surprised. I opened an island with a donation center to donate some collectibles. The music is really soothing, but the mining noise is extremely irritating in my opinion, which isn't good as you'll be hearing this a lot. It's a very simple but very fun game. You feel rewarded very quickly and you get rewarded often. I hate that when fishing though, you can try and collect your fish and they land too far for you to, actually reach them. That's just basic game design. Come on. 7 out of 10. Game 158. Forza Horizon 4. Forza Horizon differs to most racing games in that you don't build a career as a racer. Horizon gives you an open world area to explore and races or minigames to do within that, set against a backdrop of the Horizon Festival, basically a music festival that also encourages racers and really nice cars to come visit. Basically what Need for Speed Underground 2 did in 2004. Obviously Horizon 4 is a bit more fleshed out than a game that released 14 years earlier. The driving mechanics are silky smooth, the tutorial is nice and contextual, the driving line helps new players get to grips with the mechanics, and teaches you how to take corners well. The intro flicks through different weather seasons, so you get a feel for how different seasons and cars handle different environments. And then you meet your character, who is the most dull human on the planet. But that's fine, because this game is about the driving, not the people. That being said, the writing and voice acting is so poor, and really made me want to bash my head in with my controller. The UI is awful. I'd have thought by game 4 they'd have something fairly intuitive, but what do I know? I just play games, I don't make them. The open world is great. Each game has a different setting, Horizon 4 being Scotland, and being able to drive anywhere is extremely liberating. There's a car radio with some good licensed tracks for you to play while driving around, which I can't play here else I'll get sued, like I did after my last video, but trust me, the music is good. The live service element is driven by seasons, where you have racing events or challenges in a season that will give you rewards, like points, clothing, emotes, cars, etc. Or things called wheel spins, which are basically gambles for in-game items. It's a well thought out system, and I can see how it would hook you, as there are items or cars you can only get from seasonal events, so the FOMO, or fear of missing out, will keep you coming back. Slightly predatory, and it annoys me that this is the way things are going with games, but what can you do? It takes a little while for the game to open up. After 45 minutes, it was still just bouncing me from race to race, so I didn't get to explore much, which was a shame. Overall, 7 out of 10. Game 159. Forza Horizon 5. I don't have too much different to say about Horizon 5. The non-driving stuff is still really obnoxious and crap, but the Mexico setting makes for a fun world to drive through. Overall, everything just seemed pretty similar to Horizon 4. 7 out of 10. Game 160. Frostpunk Console Edition. This is a strategy survival game where the world has frozen over and you are building the last city in human history. The intro is really good. It doesn't explain why any of this is happening, just that the world has turned colder than my ex's heart and people have to survive. You send out workers for resources, wood, coal, steel, build things for your people, like camps or sick bays, hunter-gatherer posts, or even a fight arena. You have to keep the plebeians entertained somehow. You keep an eye on your city's hope and discontent and your resource levels. Problems will pop up for you to solve every now and then. For example, your people might get upset that you've legalized child labor and ask you to stop. All while making sure that the temperature doesn't drop and you keep those fires burning. It's a lot to manage and it's moderately stressful. You can research upgrades to help, but this is resource intensive, and by doing so your people might get sick or start dying because of the elements. Overall, it's a really solid game, but I just couldn't relax while playing, which is why I like to play games, and that stops me from rating it any higher. 7 out of 10. Game 161. Fuga Melodies of Steel. Okay, let me get the obvious out of the way. This is an RPG about anthropomorphic animals, aka a game for furries. And really, this game just made me say what the fuck out loud a lot. These kids drive this massive tank around and have been displaced by the Burman Empire, whose uniforms look absolutely nothing like the uniforms of any other fascist group that's ever existed. It really just feels like the devs took displaced children from World War II, turned them into animals, put them in a tank, and turned the Axis powers into dogs and made a game out of it. It's just a really weird concept. The conversation element of the game is skippable, at least, which I appreciate because these kids are really whiny. The tone is inconsistent. It's obvious death is meant to be a very serious topic in this universe, but then at the same time they give literal children grenade launchers and just have them murder scores of troops. The game is based on a linear line of battles. Go along and fight enemies in turn-based combat. The design of the tank is kind of cool, like a Howl's Moving Castle kind of thing, but I don't like the rest of the game's art design. Some of it looks really foggy and misty, whereas some parts are nice and crisp. It just doesn't really fit very well, and some of it just clashes entirely. I like the class switching mechanic to change up battles, and try to make some kind of super effectiveness thing going on. And at least there's a skill section to give you some special moves, but overall, I just didn't really like this game. Maybe it's because of the furification of war, I don't know. And just overall, the UI was just jank. It's smooth, but none of it seems to fit together. The combat seems well designed, but I didn't find it engaging. Outside of fighting, you have an intermission in the tank with side quests, upgrades, and relationship building, so there's a bit more depth to the game, which is good. And I haven't even talked about the soul cannon, which is basically just a win button. This uses a party member's life and destroys the battlefield. It's so obvious that they didn't want you to use the little kid in your party. They have all of the characters talk about how it's their duty to protect their team when you select a sacrifice for the first time, except for the defenseless little kid who just cries for their parents. So I decided to sacrifice the little kid in spite of the game trying to force me to choose someone else. After this, it turns back time following a scripted loss, and I'm not sure if it's because you're not supposed to sacrifice the one they obviously don't want you to, but who knows. Maybe the game is actually just putting me back on a path it wants me to be on. Overall, 5 out of 10. I'm not a big fan, but I can see a lot of effort went into making this. Game 162, Full Throttle Remastered. This definitely feels a lot like Day of the Tentacle. And it should, it's from the same developer, Tim Schafer, and you can easily see how he went from making this to designing Brutal Legend. This is another remaster of a point-and-click game that was Schafer's style in the 90s. The writing is much better, as well as the overall voice acting and scope of the game, with 3D modelling in some cutscenes. I never played the original, so I can't compare, but the cartoon style looks really nice, and the music is awesome. The overall feel is much more fleshed out than the other Double Fine point-and-click games I've played thus far. And there's some great comedic timing. You play as Ben, leader of the biker gang, the Polecats, who is trying to rescue his gang from the schemes of Big Motorcycle. There's a dedicated button to highlight objects you can interact with, which really thins down on random clicking, so it's a great feature. Full Throttle has really thinned down on item selection options as well, at least from Day of the Tentacle, which is good, as having 8 or so options was a bit overwhelming and redundant. The menus are nice and stylized, if a bit in your face. You get some humorous results from options, and there's some bike-to-bike combat for variety. Look at that shit-eating grin. The voice acting is aged in some parts, and movement between screens can be slow and tedious at times. It's good there's a dedicated button to switch between the old and remastered modes. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it's just a remaster of an old adventure game. Overall, 7 out of 10. And finally, game 163, Fusion Frenzy. Fun fact, the original Xbox intro wasn't pre-rendered, and so the file didn't actually exist on the Xbox hard drive. It was live rendered every single time you started up the console. I don't know why I'm telling you this, but there you go. Fusion Frenzy was a launch title for the original Xbox, and as far as launch titles go, it's pretty good. Ultimately, it's a party game like Mario Party, or at least Xbox's answer to it. There's something like 45 minigames, which, the ones I've played, were actually quite fun, and it's full of a cast of recognisable characters like Dub. I had really good fun playing it. It hasn't aged well, but for what it is, I liked it. I wish I played this back when I had an original Xbox with my friends across the street. 8 out of 10. Welcome to a new segment of these videos I'm calling the monologue, developer commentary, whatever you want to call it. This is just me kind of ad-libbing some final thoughts as I finish up editing this video before I post it. That's another 107 games played and reviewed. I actually didn't think I'd post the first part of this series, to be honest, but I had a lot of fun with this self-imposed challenge to play all the games on the Game Pass, and it's cool to see some other people were somewhat interested in watching too, so thanks for watching. Anyway, some behind the scenes trivia for you. Probably the game I played most out of everything I've played so far was actually Forza Horizon 5. I didn't even rate it that highly, but it was just really easy to dip in and out of, since it loads fast and you can do one race or challenge in a few minutes, then head off and do something else. It's just really easy to pick up. And also I fell into that FOMO trap I mentioned, as I'm a big fan of games of collectibles, and the idea of missing a card just got me a bit hooked. Probably the best part about making these videos is that it's given me a chance to play games I normally would never have played before, and there's definitely some games I'm going to loop back around to in order to play fully, and some others that are giving me some good video ideas too, so I'm looking forward to making those as well. I think at the end of this series I'll probably do a debrief video of all the results, go through my rankings list, consider if I judged a game too harshly, or maybe I was too generous and ranked it a bit too high, and kind of rejudge some of the games with a bit of hindsight. I'm also aware that as I play through the list of games from A to Z, some games are added and others are removed, so I could also do a roundup video of all the new games added every now and then, in order to keep it up to date. That could be fun. Otherwise, here's some more behind the scenes trivia. I've recorded so much footage over this part of the Shame Pass, I had to buy another terabyte hard drive just to store it all. The script for part 1 and part 2 is over 80 pages and over 30,000 words now, and I'm not even halfway through. By the end of the Game Pass, it'll be more than the size of the average novel. Any questions you want me to answer, or other bits of boring nerdy monologue you want to hear? Drop me a comment below and subscribe and I'll answer it in the next monologue. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in part 3. In the meantime, why don't you look at these totally random and not predetermined videos on the screen? I hear some of them are pretty good. If you like spooky stuff, there's that one about Halo right there. That's pretty good. Or what about Halo Infinite? That was a game. There's a video on there about it somewhere.